Shio carefully molded the rice balls and then wrapped them in a layer of plastic wrap. She then placed two inside each lunchbox before placing the lids on top and placing them in their respective bags. One bag was royal blue and had a pattern of teal and light blue polka dots, while the other was magenta with a yellow and orange plaid pattern. She smiled contently. Perfect. Shio walked over to the sink to clean off the rice that was stuck to her hands. Come on, Kona! Hikaru is going to be here any minute! She called as she dried her hands. Sorry, Shio, I'm coming! Kona called back. Shio turned around and picked up her uniform jacket, which was draped over one of the dining room chairs. She quickly put it on and then looked at herself in the mirror hanging on the adjacent wall. Meow! Shio looked down and saw her black cat walking around and rubbing up against her legs. She smiled softly and picked up the creature while rubbing her gently behind her ears. Good morning to you too, Midnight. Did you enjoy your breakfast? The cat purred and uttered a few soft mews in response, while Shio continued to pet her. Not having her parents there most of the time made her feel very lonely, so she was thankful she at least had her friends and Midnight by her side. Midnight leaned up and licked Shio's chin with another soft mew. Aw, I love you too. Shio, did I put this on right? Shio turned towards the staircase and saw Kona standing at the base. She was turning, twisting, she was looking at herself from every possible angle to see if she had put on the uniform correctly. The uniform for Shio and Hikaru's school. The uniform was made up of a white dress that was pleated and had two navy blue stripes on the bottom. It also had long white sleeves, which were covered by the jacket. The jacket itself was a near periwinkle color and was fastened in the front by a yellow button. Along the top was a navy blue sailor collar that had a single white stripe. Accenting the stripe on the right side of the collar was an emblem shaped like a seashell. Below the collar, Kona wore a pink ribbon tied into a bow. Shio wore one very similar, but hers was a sky blue instead of a pink. Whoa, that uniform really suits you, Shio commented, set Midnight down, and walked over. But did I put it on right? Shio gently grabbed the sides of Kona's bow and tugged on it ever so slightly so it looked tighter and therefore neater. You did. And again, I think it really suits you. Thank you, Shio, Kona said while blushing. Shio smiled and turned to walk back to the kitchen counter. Your school bag is on the counter. I made your lunch as well, which is in this pink pouch. You made me lunch? Shio, you didn't have to do that for me. Well, since it's your first day of school, I think you deserve a good lunch, Shio said with a smile. When I was younger and my parents were around more often, my mom would always make me special lunches on days that I had special events happening. This being your first day at school, I think that counts as a special event. Shio, don't worry about it, Kona. I don't mind helping you out by making your lunches. Thank you, Shio. You're such a good friend. Kona walked over to the kitchen counter and put the aforementioned lunchbox into her school bag before lifting it over her head and resting the strap on her shoulder. She made a note to herself that she wouldn't let Shio always make her lunches. She would need to try and learn how to cook so she could at least be of some help. Alright, let's double check again to be safe. Do you have everything you need? Shio asked. Let's see, Kona hummed as she opened the bag. I have some notebooks, pens, pencils, my lunch, my satchel. Yeah, it looks like I've got everything. Okay. Your physical ed uniform and school shoes will be at the school, as well as any class-specific materials, so you don't have to worry about those for now. But if you've got everything, we should be all set to go. I'm so excited! I can't believe your parents actually managed to enroll me, Kona said as they walked to the Genkan to put on their shoes. Me neither. I thought they would ask a lot more questions about who you are, but I guess it wasn't a big issue to them. Did they just not pay attention to what's going on in your life? Guess not, Shio said with a shrug. I've gotten used to it, though. I've been alone so many times that I sometimes think it's better this way. Kona frowned. It's not normal for your guardians to be so neglectful. I know that, but right now I have other things in my life that I can focus on that make me happy. Like you, Hikaru, our mission, I don't need to worry about my parents. Midnight walked over and rubbed up against Shio's hip. "And I've also got Midnight, of course," she said while running her hand down the cat's back. Kona bent down once she had her shoes on and scratched underneath Midnight's chin. "That's true." "All right, I think we're all ready to go," Shio said as she stood up. "Goodbye, Midnight. I'll be back soon." The cat mewed and turned to walk away. Shio smiled and opened the front door. "Kona! Shio!" Shio locked the front door and then turned to see Hikaru standing at the base of the driveway. She and Kona smiled before walking over to her. "Good morning, Hikaru," Shio greeted. "Morning!" Hikaru responded cheerfully. "Aha! This is so exciting! We get to go to school with Kona!" Hikaru excitedly threw her arms around Kona and squealed. Kona hugged her back and squealed herself, just at a lower volume. "I can't believe I'm going to a human school! I would have never imagined that I'd have this opportunity even a few months ago!" Kona exclaimed. "I didn't even believe you'd come to school with us. I just thought you would, I don't know, do your mermaid things and then come hang out with us when you had free time. But now we get to hang out every single day! I know!" They smiled cheekily while Shio watched them. "Guess I now have two high-energy friends to deal with," she commented sarcastically. "Aw, come on, Shio. I'm never that bad," Hikaru defended. "I know. I'm just teasing you." Hikaru pouted. "You're mean, Shio."
You girls just need to remember to be careful, Fee.
Delphi popped out of the ocean book and flew up so she was facing the girls.
Kona is still a mermaid and is inherently endangered by being in the human world, Fee. You both need to make sure she doesn't get found out, Fee,
Delphi explained in a strict tone. Don't be such a worrywart, Delphi. Kona will be fine, I'm sure of it, Hikaru said. And besides, to turn back into a mermaid, she has to use her heart shell. It's not like she reverts the moment she touches water.
I know, but still, I just want you guys to be careful, Fee.
Kona stepped forwards and gently rubbed Delphi's head. We will, Delphi, I promise. Delphi nuzzled herself into Kona's touch and squeaked quietly, but in a happy tone. She was glad she had managed to find a group of such caring girls who took things seriously. She couldn't have asked for a better group of people to be the Precure. We should get going now so we don't miss our train. Being late on your first day would be very bad, Shio urged. Of course, Kona said and pulled out the ocean book. Hop back in, Delphi. If we need you at all, we'll let you know.
Okay, Fee.
Delphi flew back into the book before Kona put it back inside her school bag. The layer very nearly shook as Locke thrusted her fist into the wall. She screamed in frustration and just kept punching, over and over again. Punch after punch after punch. She threw at the wall to expel any anger she could, until there was a brand new crater in the wall. What the fuck is your problem? Some of us need to sleep, you know, Ooze chastised in a tired tone as she swam into the room. I just can't stand them. Those stupid Precure ruin everything. Ooze rolled her eyes and swam over. Haven't I told you before that you're just incompetent and suck at your job? She said. And besides, now we've got a new hole in the wall. Are you trying to piss off Ooze looked down at Locke's clenched fists and saw that they were leaking blood. Her face softened ever so slightly. Sure, Locke had a massive temper and frequently raged, but she had never busted her fists like this before. It was surprising, even to Ooze. You're bleeding. What of it? Locke snapped. We can't have you making a mess around here, Ooze said and grabbed Locke's wrist. Let's clean you up. Get your hands off me, Locke shouted and ripped her arm out of Ooze's hand. I don't need you to treat me like I'm some fucking kid. Ooze glared at Locke, but then turned away with her arms crossed. Eat shit, she muttered. What is with the ruckus? Locke and Ooze turned around and saw both Seish and Scarp entering the room. Both were visibly groggy and had clearly been woken up by their argument. Seish rubbed her eyes while yawning, and Scarp just glared angrily. My apologies, Scarp-sama, Locke said. Scarp clicked her tongue and crossed her arms. Both of you need to get yourselves under control before you are punished by the king. We can't afford to let your petty squabbles affect the mission. Understood. Now, I assume that you failed again. A lump appeared in Locke's throat. Yes. I'm very disappointed in you, Locke, Scarp said quietly. But that is not a matter to be discussed right now. We need to focus on reworking our strategy. What do you suggest we do, Scarp-sama? Ooze asked. Well, Scarp said and turned to Seish. What have you come up with so far, Seish? Seish yawned but then bowed. I believe if we were to take the confidence power of more than one human at once, we could create Kidaimisas that are far more powerful, Seish explained. Those monsters thrive off of that power, so it may make them too strong for the Precure to handle. You make a good point. I want you to go out next, use that strategy, and report back to me with your results. Yes, Scarp-sama. But for now, we all need to go back to bed. You two especially, Scarp snarled, glaring at Ooze and Locke. She turned around and swam back the way she had come. Seish looked at the two and then shrugged before following Scarp. Ooze looked at Locke and then clicked her tongue before swimming off herself. This is the platform we come to every day. This is where our train will come. Shio motioned with her hand around the area as she explained everything about the station she thought Kona should know. What exactly is a train? Kona asked. It's a large vehicle that moves people from place to place. It's usually faster than walking or going by car. Well, obviously a train's gonna be faster than walking, Hikaru said in a sarcastic tone and with a grin. Shio rolled her eyes while Kona giggled. Hikaru, Shio muttered. Hikaru smiled cheekily and lightly tapped Shio on the shoulder. I'm just messing with you, Shio. Shio rolled her eyes again, but this time it ended in a smile. I know, Shio said and turned around to look behind her. Oh, looks like the train is here. The aforementioned vehicle slowed as it pulled into place, bringing a gust of wind along with it. Hikaru squealed happily while Kona giggled. The train came to a stop, and they all pat down the hair that had been blown out of place. Wow, that was really cool, Kona exclaimed. That's my favorite part of taking the trains, Hikaru said. There's just something so satisfying about that gust of wind. Pay attention, you two! Both of them looked at the train and saw Shio already standing on it. Hikaru's eyes widened, and she grabbed Kona's wrist, quickly pulling her onto the train just as the doors were closing. Whew, that was close, Hikaru said and took a deep breath while they took their seats. I think it would benefit you to be more aware of your surroundings, Hikaru. Don't want you to get left behind and be late for first period again, Shio teased. Hey, I haven't been late to first period since last year. But it was because you missed the train, right? Hikaru pouted. You're mean. Kona giggled. I'm really lucky to have you guys as my friends. You're really funny, she said. We're just teasing each other. It's nothing special, Shio responded. Yeah, but it's clear you two care for each other and can have fun whenever you're given the opportunity. You can tease each other and it isn't an issue. I think that's really important in a friendship. Shio blushed slightly at the compliment and then glanced at Hikaru. Hikaru glanced at Shio as well and gave her a wink with a cheeky smile. Shio quickly averted her eyes. Thank you. Kona removed her bag from her shoulder and placed it on the floor in front of her feet with a very soft plop. The force of this plop wasn't very strong, but it was enough to cause something to fall out and skid across the floor. It was the ocean book. Oops, Kona said and quickly picked it up. I guess I didn't actually put it back in my satchel earlier. Kona, be careful, Fee! Delphi's voice was slightly muffled due to her being within the book, but was still loud enough to be heard outside. Kona quickly put her hand over the window on the front cover to muffle it even more while looking around in a frantic manner to see if anyone had heard. Luckily, they had chosen a train car that had nearly no one on it besides them. Anyone who was on the train was on the opposite end of the car. Kona sighed with relief and sat back down. Delphi, don't just shout like that, Kona scolded in a hushed tone. I'm sorry, Fee, but we can't let anything happen to this book while it holds the medallion, Fee. I know. I'll actually put it in my satchel this time, she said and opened her school bag. Wait. Kona looked up at Shio. Kona hummed. I'm actually kind of curious. What is that book exactly? Shio asked. Kona looked at the book. I mean, it's a book, I guess. Yeah, but where did it come from? Well, I found it at the same time I found the heart shells in Delphi. It was originally just a generic leather bound journal that transformed when I became a precure, Kona explained. Did you see if it had any entries? No, I didn't. When I found it, I opened it to look at what was inside, but Delphi immediately flew out when I did. I was a little too shocked after that to check, and then we were attacked. Well, why don't we look now? Hikaru suggested. There could be information in there that might help us out with the mission, you know? Wouldn't that be an invasion of privacy? Kona asked. Well, the prince is dead, right? Does it really matter? Dead people still deserve privacy, Hikaru, Shio said.
I think it's okay, Fee,
Delphi piped up. Are you sure? You wouldn't mind if we looked at the prince's personal journal? Kona asked.
Hikaru is right, Fee. There could be information in there that could benefit our mission, Fee.
All right, if you agree, Kona said and opened the ocean book to the first page. The first page didn't have any writing. It had the same drawing of a dolphin that Kona had seen when she first found the journal. She hadn't noticed before, but now that she had a chance to take a proper look at it, she realized that it was in fact a portrait of Delphi. She smiled and then flipped to the next page, which did have writing on it. Entry 1, February 15th, Kona read. My parents just gifted me this journal for my birthday, but I don't know why. I've never expressed any interest in keeping a diary, and I have no vested interest in writing. They told me they wanted me to write in it whenever I needed to vent, and they weren't around to listen. It's kinda dumb, but I guess I appreciate the gesture regardless. I don't see myself using this at all, but whatever. I guess it's here if I ever do want it. Wait, hold on, you can read that? Shio asked. Kona looked up at her with a raised eyebrow. Yeah? I don't recognize any of the letters. Is this a different language?
I can't see from here, but it's likely written in Ocean Kingdom script, Fee. It's just the writing system we used, Fee,
Delphi explained. But how can Kona read it? Hikaru asked. Maybe it's based on the magic I get from my heart shell? I have no idea, Kona said. Well, if that's the case, then wouldn't me and Shio also be able to read it? Well, I guess it's not important. Let's just keep reading, Shio suggested. Kona nodded and flipped to the next page. Entry 2, March 9th. I don't know what to do. I feel like my life was just completely turned upside down. My parents were just assassinated. They were killed. I'm all alone. I'm alone. What should I do? I'm not prepared to run a kingdom. I have no idea how. Any training I've gone through up to this point didn't tell me what to do in the event my parents died prematurely. I've been taught manners, important economic advice. I've learned a lot of relevant information. But not this. No one prepared me for this. I swear I'm going to imprison that bastard and make sure he never sees the light of day again. I want him to suffer for killing my parents. Whoa, the king and queen were assassinated? Damn, what did they do to make that happen? Hikaru asked.
I don't remember a lot about what happened because it was so long ago, Fee, but I believe they were funneling money into programs and organizations that were actively harming the less fortunate citizens of the kingdom, Fee, Delphi explained. Someone eventually killed them because they got so fed up with it, Fee. Oh yeah, it says here in the next entry that the prince was able to talk to the assassin, and that's how he became aware of what his parents were doing, Kona said as her eyes wandered the page. He went out afterwards to talk and gather information from the citizens, and that's how he was able to confirm that it was all true. They were funneling money to help keep the rich people rich, and were actively silencing any opposition. Good lord, that's awful, Hikaru said. And the prince didn't know about any of this? Shio asked. Kona shook her head. He says he was shocked and appalled by his parents' actions, so I guess they intentionally kept him in the dark. The king and queen were very shady people and were very unpopular before they were killed, Fee. But the prince stepped up afterwards and he began to reverse all of the damage his parents had done, Fee, Delphi said. It took him a while, but through the years following their deaths, he managed to regain the citizens' trust, and he actively worked to make sure everyone was as equal and had as equal of opportunities as possible, Fee. Wow, I've never heard of anyone in power doing anything like that, Hikaru muttered.
Makes our world look like shit, Shio added. Yeah, even in Coral Reef City, I know that a lot of people aren't very fond of the king, Kona said. I don't really care about him, but I have to be friendly since I'm good friends with his daughter. Of course, Hikaru laughed. Keep reading, though. We still need to find the info that's actually relevant. Kona glanced over the next several pages, but found that there was nothing really of note. They were all entries pertaining to the prince's everyday life, whether they be complaints about his duties or him gushing about the breakfast that he'd been served that particular day. There wasn't anything of note. It was just an average journal. Wait, Kona eventually said and stopped on a page. This one doesn't look like it was finished. Shio and Hikaru scanned the page. You're right. It looks like that there was no punctuation at the end of the sentence, Shio said and pointed to where the writing had stopped. Huh. What does it say? Hikaru asked. It's dated on September 7th, Kona started. I'm looking forward to the upcoming month. There are going to be lots of celebrations surrounding the Shell Festival, which is one of the biggest events of the year. I've always dove headfirst into the festivities, and now that I'll be able to help coordinate everything on my own, I feel like I can do so even more. Although, I worry about what the citizens will put together for my birthday. As it's been getting closer and closer to the 23rd, they seem to be getting more antsy and excited every day. I hope they're not planning anything extra. And that's where it ends. Huh, Hikaru hummed. I think this word is meant to be extravagant, but it only reads extra, Kona explained while pointing to said word. Well, I mean, I guess anything could have happened. Maybe he had some responsibilities to attend to and decided to come back to his journal later, Shio posited. But wouldn't he have finished the entry at a later point then? Hikaru retorted. I guess it doesn't matter, Kona said and turned to the next page to read the entry. Crap, I don't know what is happening. Nearly the entire castle just shook, and everyone inside is running around. My advisor just walked in and told me that we are under attack. I don't know what is happening. Under attack? Wait, is this... Hikaru started. The fall of the kingdom? Shio finished. He detailed the entire situation?
I didn't know he had been writing everything down in his journal the whole time, Fee. This must be... These are his last words, Fee, Delphi said, her voice trailing off.
The girls looked at each other with sympathetic glances. We can stop reading if you'd like us to, Kona said. We can wait till another time.
No, it's fine, Fee. There might be something important in there, right, Fee?
Kona raised an eyebrow. Well, if you're okay with it. She turned the page. I need to keep up to date with the situation and document it here, but I simply cannot. We've been invaded, and I have to fight. She read and turned the page again. We're leaving. We were overwhelmed and we are leaving. Everyone is dead except for me and my advisor. We have to escape. We're the only ones who can do anything anymore. If the kingdom was falling, how was he able to write in his journal? Hikaru asked.
He was always very good at multitasking, Fee, Delphi said, her hushed voice slightly wavering. I guess he felt the need to document the situation, Fee.
Again,
my memory is foggy, but I vaguely remember a bunch of the palace guards and people who were on his council were trying to usher the prince away to safety because so many people cared about him, Fee. They were grateful for everything he had done, so they didn't want to risk losing him, Fee. But the prince was insistent on wanting to give his all to fight to save the kingdom, Fee. He was willing to lay down his life to save his people, Fee.
It seems like your world, and to some extent our world, lost a truly amazing person then, Shio muttered. Delphi sniffled.
Yeah, he was one of the best people I ever knew, Fee.
Kona frowned sympathetically and turned the page. I guess he was trying to do so much at once between fighting and writing while you were fleeing. The handwriting for this entry is so frantic and unorganized, she noted. You're right. I can't even read it, and I can tell, Hikaru agreed. Can you still make sense of it, though? Shio asked. Kona nodded. We ran, and now we are on my ship, sailing the oceans of a parallel world referred to as Earth. We closed the portal, and the Siren King and his minions should be able to follow us through. We finally have a moment to breathe, she read. Our current mission feels stupid as it is nothing more than an investigation into an ancient fairy tale told to children, but it may be our only remaining hope. If the story is true, then the Precure may be the only ones who can save the kingdom. I've never truly believed the story of the ancient Precure, but it is a pillar for the citizens in the Ocean Kingdom. These ancient warriors hold a godlike power, and the people truly believe in them. Even if they don't exist and I'm only chasing a childish dream, I have to try, for the sake of the kingdom. Hey, it looks like we found what we were looking for, Hikaru mentioned. So as I understand it, the Precure are sort of similar to religious figures to those in the Ocean Kingdom? Shio asked.
Sort of, Fee,
Delphi responded.
The belief in them isn't exactly rooted in religion. It's more a popular story that was told to kids as they grew up for generations, to a point where it became a story that was cemented in our culture, Fee. They are similar to religious figures, but it wasn't like we had a kingdom-wide religion, Fee.
Did you believe in them? Kona asked.
Kind of, Fee. Obviously I did as a kid, but I eventually forgot about them as I grew up, Fee. It's not that I stopped believing, it's that I just didn't remember, Fee.
And the prince didn't believe in them? Delphi shook her head.
He always thought that the story of the Precure was just a story, Fee. He thought that the heart shells we held in our possession were just props and didn't actually hold any power, Fee,
Delphi explained.
But when the kingdom fell, he had no choice but to put all of his hope into the legend, Fee.
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, I guess, Hikaru muttered. Kona smiled nervously at the joke, but then looked at the next entry. Delphi hasn't stopped crying for hours since we escaped. I've wanted to cry many times as well, but I know I have to stay strong for her sake. If she knows that I am also terrified, well, I don't know what would happen. I need to stay strong for her sake. I need to stay strong for the kingdom's sake. I need to stay strong. Kona read, her face and voice falling. But how does one stay strong in a situation like this? I just lost my entire kingdom. I lost every single one of my friends and all of my subjects. My home was completely destroyed and everyone was killed. Delphi and I are the only survivors. Everyone else is gone. I want more than anything to simply break down and cry my eyes out until I can't cry anymore. I want to scream to the heavens and express the anguish my heart feels, but I can't. I have to be strong for the both of us. I have to be strong. It was now silent between all four of them. It was becoming clear to Kona, Shio, and Hikaru that the situation being described was far more dire than they had understood, and it was clear to Delphi that the prince, her closest friend, had suffered even more than she had expected in the time that led up to his death. He forced himself to put on a brave face so she wouldn't worry about him. He had sacrificed so much. Quietly, Kona moved on. We've been sailing on the open seas for about 5 days now, and we have yet to find anything. This world is enormous, far bigger than the Ocean Kingdom. If the Precure are here somewhere, how will we ever find them? They could be anywhere. I have also been told that similar to the kingdom, this world is mostly made up of deep oceans with several land masses. I'm unaware if there are any mermaids or sea fairies in this world, so I have hope that there are at least a few humans who hold the power of the Precure somewhere on one of the land masses. The only problem is that we have been sailing for days and we have not come across one bit of land. All there is a vast ocean stretching as far as the eye can see. I guess I can at least be thankful we have yet to been pursued, she read. Delphi has calmed down, but it's clear she is still very shaken up about everything. And I think she may be catching on to the fact that I'm also suppressing my feelings because she keeps urging me to talk about what I'm thinking. But I refuse to tell her because And it cuts off there. Another cutoff? Huh, that's strange, Shio said.
It was the siren's feet,
Delphi said, her voice barely audible. Huh? Kona hummed.
I remember this part, Feet. The sirens pursued us to the human world and caught up with us after a few days of us sailing, Feet. They attacked us and...
Delphi's voice trailed off, and she didn't finish her sentence. The girls all exchanged another sympathetic look as they understood. They didn't need Delphi to finish her thought. It looks like there's only one entry left, Kona noted as she ruffled through the next few pages. After this, the rest of them are blank. Kona landed on the last journal entry, and the girls all observed it with curiosity. Geez, the handwriting here is terrible, Hikaru said. Hikaru! Shio scolded quietly, but forcefully. What? Look at it! It's nowhere near as neat as his other entries. I wouldn't say it's bad handwriting. I would say that it's frantic, Kona said. It's like that entry he wrote when they were fleeing. He had to write quickly, so he couldn't focus on making it look neat. But if this entry is more frantic than the others, Shio muttered. Hikaru gulped. Just read it. Let's get it over with, she mumbled. Kona nodded and turned her attention to the final journal entry. This is my final entry in this journal, and will be the final words I ever utter or write. They have found us. The Siren King sent his minions after us, and they have found the ship. I am writing this as frantically as I can, but the barrier I have created will only last so long against their immeasurable strength. I'm going to do what I can to fight back, but it will be 4 against 1. Even with my rapier, I don't stand a chance. I won't be able to carry on looking for the Precure. I'm going to fight until I die. To whoever finds this journal, I need you to pay close attention. The girls looked at each other again. This was indirectly addressed to them. It is your mission to find the Precure. They are the only ones who can save the Ocean Kingdom and protect your world from the King's advances as well. Considering what I am leaving behind, it is almost certain that he will come for this world in search of it. If he comes, he will stop at nothing, and your world will meet the same fate as the Ocean Kingdom. It will be utterly destroyed. This isn't a laughing matter. It isn't a joke. The Siren King is a serious threat to every single person in this world. If you have found this journal, then you have found the wooden chest I hid it in. Within this chest, you will also find the 4 heart shells. These compacts will be what you use to find the Precure. I am also leaving behind this journal with this entry as a letter that tells you what you need to do, as well as my medallion. This medallion absolutely cannot fall into the hands of the Siren King or his minions. If he gets his hands on it, then he will be able to access the remaining source of our magic that is locked away in the ruins of the kingdom. The only person who can get in is me, and the only key is my medallion. If the king gets it, then he will be able to get to that source. It is absolutely vital that the medallion remains safe. I am also leaving Delphi here as well. She will be within my journal where she will be safe, as the Siren King nor his minions will be able to access the chest on their own. Delphi will be there to help you on your mission of finding the Precure, as she knows the same information on them that I do. She may not remember every detail about the fall of the kingdom, or even myself, but she should remember all of the information necessary to help you find the Precure. Delphi's soft sniffles continued to be heard from within the book. She was trying to make it so it wasn't obvious that she was crying, but she wasn't very successful. Kona, Shio, and Hikaru didn't care, though, because they fully understood that hearing all of these entries being read aloud had to be really hard, as they were her best friend's last words. I don't have much more time. Please find the Precure. Take the heart shells and find the Precure. They are the only ones left who can save the Ocean Kingdom and protect your world from harm. Please find the Precure. Kona finished. And it's signed Prince Nalu? Delphi immediately stopped crying, and her unseen eyes went wide.
Prince Nalu, how could I have forgotten his name, Fee?
She shouted. Shh! The girls all quickly hushed. One person further down the train car turned their head to look at the girls as he heard the ruckus. They only responded with a collective, simple, nervous smile. He shook his head and went back to whatever he had been doing on his phone. The girls then let out a collective sigh. That was close, Shio said. But Delphi, you didn't remember the prince's name? Kona asked.
No, I didn't, Fee. I know I don't remember a lot because it has been so long since everything happened, but I don't understand how I could have forgotten his name when he was my best friend, Fee, she whisper shouted while holding back her tears.
It's okay, Delphi. Amnesia isn't predictable, so it's perfectly understandable that you didn't remember everything. Even the prince himself didn't expect you to remember everything about him.
I know, but I feel so bad, Fee. He was my best friend and I forgot his name, Fee.
Is there anything else you can remember about the prince? Hikaru asked. Delphi went silent for quite a few seconds as she tried to recall anything about the prince, any little detail at all.
He was left-handed, Fee?
Hikaru facepalmed. Wow, she mumbled.
I'm sorry, it's all I can remember, Fee.
It's okay, Delphi. I'm sure you'll remember more as time goes on, Kona reassured.
Thank you, Kona Fee.
A ringing was heard throughout the train, signaling that it was about to make its next stop. The train began to slow soon after. This is Shinkai City Station. Shinkai City Station. This is our stop, Shio said and stood up. Okay, Kona said and closed the ocean book. Delphi looked up at Kona through the window and was met with a reassuring smile. We'll talk more about everything after school, okay, Delphi? I'm sure everything is going to be fine and that you'll remember everything about the prince.
Okay, Fee. Please be safe today, all of you, Fee.
Roger that, Hikaru cheered. Kona made sure that she actually put the ocean book fully within her satchel and then stood up at the door next to the others. The train came to a complete stop, the doors opened, and they all stepped out onto the platform with a crowd of other commuters. Whoa, human transportation is ridiculously fast, Kona said in awe as she looked around the station. Right? It can take you anywhere in the world super fast. The convenience is amazing, Hikaru exclaimed. It seems like we were barely on that train for any time at all. It's amazing. Well, now we get to walk the rest of the way to the school, Shio added with a smile. Hikaru pouted. Ugh, I hate walking. You're an athlete, Hikaru. You should be able to do it no problem. Well, of course I can do it with no problem. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Shio rolled her eyes while Kona simply giggled. They exited the train station and began to make their way up the hill towards the school building along with the mass of other students. Kona looked around with a puzzled expression. What's wrong, Kona? Shio inquired when she noticed. Nothing's wrong. I'm just not used to seeing so many people wearing the same clothes, she said. I know it's because it's the uniform that's required, but it's just so weird. I'm sure it is, but you'll get used to it eventually because you'll be seeing it almost every single day. Yeah, you're right. The girls continued talking as they finally made it up the hill and entered the school. Shio and Hikaru immediately walked over to their shoe cubbies and put on their school shoes before placing their walking shoes in the cubbies. Kona stood behind them and watched with a look of confusion. Why are you guys changing your shoes? She asked. It's because it helps keep the school a little bit cleaner. There isn't a cleaning crew that cleans the school, so the students have to do it ourselves at the end of every school day, Shio explained. We wear special shoes within the school building so we can limit the amount of outside dirt we track in. Oh, cool, she said and looked around. But, where are my shoes? Shio looked at the nearby cubbies and found one right in the middle row with Kona's name. She opened it and pulled out Kona's shoes. They're right in here. This is also where you'll store your outside shoes while you're in school. Okay. Kona sat down on one of the provided benches and quickly changed her shoes. She then placed her other pair inside her cubby and turned to Shio and Hikaru with a smile. I think I'm ready. Then let's head to the classroom. They left the cubby area and climbed the stairs to the second floor. Shio led them down the hallway until they reached the classroom that was labeled with a wooden placard hanging from the ceiling. 2B. This is our classroom, Shio said. It looks bigger than I expected, Kona commented as she gazed through the windows. It holds around, I want to say, 35 people, but our class only has about 30. We're actually one of the smaller classes in the school. So is everyone extra close and friendly? I would say so, Shio said and looked at Hikaru. They totally are! Also, I think we have some of the best teachers, too, Hikaru cheered in agreement. They still give us too much homework for my liking, but they're actually super lenient with us. I've gotten away with too many late assignments. Maybe I could have a chat with the teacher about changing her policy. Might encourage you to be more punctual with your work, Shio teased. No, please don't, Hikaru begged and put her hands together. I need the extra time! Shio laughed slightly. I'm just joking. Hikaru pouted. Meanie, she said. Anyways, I'm eating lunch on the roof today, so feel free to join me. Shio shook her head and then opened the door to the classroom. Hikaru entered, and Kona was about to follow her, but Shio stopped her. You actually have to wait out here for a bit, she said. Huh? Why? Kona asked. It's customary for new students to introduce themselves in front of the class, and teachers usually have them wait outside until they're brought in for said introduction. Kona went white. I have to talk in front of the class? She stuttered. On my first day? Yeah, but it will only be for like a minute or two. Usually it's just your name, age, where you're from, and maybe one of your interests. It's nothing too bad, and I know you'll be able to do it, Shio encouraged with a smile. Kona gulped and nodded while she watched Shio enter the room. Her heart began to race, and it felt like her head and vision were growing fuzzier by the second. She had explored the open ocean and its many dangers many times before this. She had faced down evil creatures and fought monsters. Yet the simple prospect of having to introduce herself in front of a group of people was the thing making her feel so anxious. Kona placed her hand on her chest to feel her heartbeat and tried to take deep breaths to calm herself down. But it didn't seem to be working. Her mind just wouldn't let her. It felt like the pressure was causing the world to cave in around her, and she was shrinking, until everything was dark. The walls were closing in, and she couldn't move. She couldn't think. She couldn't... Sayo-san? Kona was suddenly pulled from her thoughts back to the hallway by a familiar voice. She looked up, and standing in front of her was Takumi. Kaito-kun! She almost shouted due to being startled. I didn't mean to startle you. Sorry about that, Takumi said with a slight laugh. But hey, it's good to see you. I didn't know you'd be starting here so soon. Yeah, me neither. Takumi raised an eyebrow and tilted his head slightly. Are you alright, Sayo-san? He asked with some concern present in his voice. Huh? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Was she trying to reassure Takumi or herself? She didn't know. It's about having to introduce yourself to the class, right? Kona looked down with a small nod. Takumi smiled reassuringly and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him, his reassuring smile warming her anxious mind. Speaking in front of people is always difficult, even if you prepare for weeks ahead of time. I usually feel pretty comfortable speaking in front of a crowd, but I still have times where I get super nervous and think that there's no way that I can go through with a speech, he said. But I always tell myself that as long as I am just myself and I am true to who I am, I can put my nerves aside and speak with confidence. If I can show people through my words and actions what my beliefs are, show who I really am, it makes what I'm saying more genuine and it helps me connect with my audience. What do you mean? I'm saying that you just need to focus on being yourself. Don't worry about pleasing people or trying to make them like you. If you try to put on a facade, people will be able to tell. Just be genuine and honest about who you are, and people will better connect with you through that, Takumi continued. Just be you. Kona's eyes widened slightly, and she looked back down. Sure, she was still extremely nervous, but the advice Takumi gave was giving her a bit more peace of mind. Maybe he was right. She didn't need to worry about putting on a facade to please her new classmates. She just needed to be true to who she was. She just needed to be herself. Thank you, Kaito-kun, she said, a soft smile settling on her face. You're welcome, Sayo-san. Good luck today. You're gonna do great. Takumi gave another warm smile and then entered the classroom. Kona clutched her chest again to try and calm her beating heart. She began to take deep breaths again. In and out. In and out. In and out. What Takumi had said struck her in a way she didn't think was possible. She had never thought about being genuine to herself and who she was, because most people will automatically try to put forth a false image of themselves to try and please others. Sure, she didn't care what people thought of her when it came to exploring the open ocean, but she was always self-conscious about what other people thought of her in social situations. But being unapologetically genuine, she wondered if that would help her face the fear of talking to the class. Konasayo? Kona jumped as she was pulled from her thoughts once again. She looked up at the door and was met with the smiling face of her new teacher. Uh, yeah? You're welcome to come in now. Oh, yes, thank you, she said and walked into the classroom. The teacher stepped behind her podium and instructed Kona to stand next to her. Kona did so, but kept her eyes focused on the ground. Class, this is our new student who will be joining us as of today. Please welcome Miss Kona Sayo. A round of applause sounded across the classroom, which got Kona to pull her eyes off of the floor. She looked around and saw nothing but smiling faces. Not one person in the room looked unwelcoming or scary like she had expected. Everyone just seemed normal. Sayo-san, would you please tell us a bit about yourself? The teacher asked. Uh, well, she stuttered. She looked down again and began to twiddle her thumbs. She could do this. She knew she could. She just had to be herself. Kona looked up again and scanned the classroom. She saw Hikaru in the back corner giving her a cheeky smile and a thumbs up, and then saw Shio, who gave her a simple nod. She then looked over and met eyes with Takumi. He gave her a soft smile, a reassuring nod, and mouthed the words, "You've got this." Kona smiled back and then took another big, deep breath. Hello, my name is Kona Sayo, and I love exploring and learning new things. It's been my biggest passion ever since I was little, so I'm very excited to be here so I can learn even more. It's nice to meet all of you, she said, her smile lighting up the room as she bowed. Applause erupted throughout the classroom once again. Kona stood back up, her heart fluttering from the unexpected acceptance of her classmates. Her friends were right. Everyone was welcoming and happy to see her. Maybe being genuine and herself really wasn't so bad after all. We're very happy to have you here with us, Kona, the teacher said. Your seat will be at that desk, right next to Kaito-san, and in front of Yumiko-san. Thank you, Kona said and sat at her desk. Hey, you did a great job, Takumi whispered. Thank you, she whispered back. Kaito-san, the teacher said. Yeah? As you are the president of the student council, would you be able to give Sayo-san a tour of the school later? Of course, Takumi responded. Thank you, she said. Now why don't we get started with today's lesson? Alright, I was told that you agreed to give our new student a tour of the school, correct? The teachers had cycled their classrooms, and Class 2B's language arts teacher had just entered the room for their third period. The homeroom teacher had communicated with him about their new student and how she had asked Takumi to give her a tour. That is correct, sir, Takumi responded. Since this is the last period before lunch, I would like you to do so now. We aren't covering anything of major importance today, so you shouldn't have to worry about catching up. Of course. Thank you, sir. And to you, Sayo-san. I do hope you enjoy your time at our school. Thank you, sir, Kona responded while bowing. The two then turned around and left the classroom. Alright, where do we start? Takumi mumbled and put his hands on his hips. Well, you're the tour guide, so you tell me, Kona said with a smile. Then why don't we just start right here? Takumi held out his arms and turned around. This is the second floor hallway. The entire building is set up in the rough shape of a square, so this hallway sort of circles around, he explained. The classrooms are labeled according to the floor and which number they are. All second years are on the second floor, so all of the classrooms are labeled with the Arabic numeral 2. Our class is the second classroom on this floor, so to represent that, they use the second letter from the English alphabet, which is B. Hence the label 2B. How many classrooms are on each floor? Kona asked. There's 10 rooms on each floor, and they all have between about 28 and 38 students in them. They also all have roughly the same structure. Wow, that adds up to a lot of people then. It does, but this is one of the bigger middle schools in this city, and we've got people coming in from all over the area, so everyone's pretty much used to it. I've never had any classes that were this big back home. We had classes that had maybe 15 to 20 people each. Well, hopefully it isn't too intimidating here. I promise most people are going to be very nice and very welcoming. You're going to make a lot of friends, Takumi explained. But enough about that for now. Let's continue before we get too far behind. Takumi and Kona continued on their way throughout the school. They went through the rest of the second floor, the first floor, they went outside to the pool, they walked by the cafeteria, they went pretty much everywhere. Takumi explained each place, some with more detail than others, and Kona listened patiently. She appreciated how much detail he would give, and all the jokes he would occasionally try to crack. His presence was calming and welcoming. She barely knew him, and yet his attitude and demeanor made her feel like she'd known him for years. She understood why Shio had sung his praises after they'd first ran into him, and understood why he was the leader of a student group as important as the council. It was obvious that he was the embodiment of the advice he had given her earlier. Just be yourself, and let your beliefs show through your actions. He was himself through and through, and he emanated his beliefs of helping anyone he could. Alright, let's see. How are we doing on time? Takumi stopped and looked at a clock on a nearby wall. We've got about 15 minutes to lunch. Do you want to sit and take a breather before we go back to the classroom to eat? He asked.
Sure.
Takumi led Kona to the courtyard that was in the center part of the school. He sat on a bench under the tree in the center, and Kona sat next to him. So what do you think of the school so far?
I really like it. Everything is very easy to find and structured very well, and I like how beautiful the outdoor areas are. This courtyard specifically, it's very nice.
A breeze blew through the courtyard. Kona smiled contently. That's good to hear. I'm glad I was a good tour guide.
I think that was the best tour I've ever been on.
Yeah? And how many tours have you been on?
That one.
Takumi snickered and then began to laugh out loud when he couldn't contain said snickers. Kona herself giggled a bit at his reaction. Wow, that was a good one, he said through his laughter.
Why, thank you.
Takumi took some deep breaths and was able to calm down again fairly quickly. So what brings you to Shinkai City and by extension this school? He asked.
Well, it's kind of a long story that I can't really tell you right now, but it all boils down to the fact that I wanted a new experience, she explained. I happened upon the city by accident, but I fell in love with it pretty quickly. Plus, being able to stay at Shio's house helps out too, because I don't have to worry about having a place to stay while I'm here.
That's very cool. I hope you'll get what you're looking for here.
Kona nodded. Well, we've talked enough about me today. What about you? She asked.
What do you mean? Takumi responded.
I guess I just want to get to know you better since we're classmates now. You know a lot about me, so tell me about you.
Well, boy, where do I even start? I wasn't prepared for this.
Well, you said you weren't originally from around here when we first met, right? What was it like in your hometown?
Well, it was definitely a lot colder because we lived up north. But we moved down here when I was about 9 or 10 because my dad got a job offer that paid a lot more money and made it so we could live more comfortably, he said. It was rough. Being the new kid was rough. It felt like I was so out of place and that everyone thought I was weird. But I guess over time, I decided that I wasn't going to let other people's perception of me affect me. That's how I came to the philosophy that it's better to just be yourself no matter what. When you're true to your beliefs and you can sort of sell that to people, that's what will attract them to you and make them want to stay by your side.
That's a really wonderful mindset, Kaito-kun. I think you'll touch a lot of people with that throughout your life.
Thank you, he said with a soft smile.
So what are your parents like?
They're amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better pair of people to raise me. They support me in anything I choose to do, and they always try to help me if I'm struggling, even when they don't understand what's wrong.
My grandparents are the same way. They were very wary of me coming to study here, but they decided to trust me after I talked to them. I'm sure that if they didn't, I wouldn't be here now.
I'm glad they decided to trust you then, because I think you're going to do very well here.
Kona giggled. Takumi smiled gently, but then looked down, his smile quickly fading.
You know, I remember you told me some time ago that you were looking for your biological parents. I did truly mean it when I told you that I wanted to help you find them. Like you said, it will be difficult, I know, but I want to help you. Even if they're not the best people, I think you at least deserve to know who they are and ask them why they left you with your grandparents. Takumi somewhat mumbled. I want people to at least know who their biological parents are.
Kona raised an eyebrow. What do you mean?
Takumi sighed. My biological parents died when I was only a few months old. I never knew them. I never found out what happened to them. All I know is that I was surrendered to an orphanage and then adopted by my parents, he explained. I just. I want people to have even the smallest potential of meeting their bio parents to get that opportunity if that's what they want. I want to help you reach that goal because I can't. I want to use my inability to reach my own goals to help others reach theirs. Kona's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected him to say that because to her, it didn't seem like something someone would say to someone else they're not terribly close to. But also, she felt for him. She didn't know where her biological parents were, so for all she knew, they could also be dead. There was a small flame of hope that they were still out there, but she had no way of knowing. But not knowing who or where they were, or even if they were still alive, that was still enough for her to feel for Takumi. Hey, Kona said quietly and gently placed her right hand on Takumi's shoulder. Takumi looked back at her. I'm really thankful that you want to help. The more people I have by my side, the more likely it is that we'll find them, so I'm glad I have another person to help, she continued. And for you, maybe we can form a new kind of family for you. You have your adoptive parents, of course, but I think that friends are a very important part of a complete family. Maybe me, Shio, and Hikaru can all become your friends, and we can all be our own little family together. Takumi's eyes widened. He could tell she was being genuine. She was radiating it through her smile and the small gesture of touching his shoulder. She seemed to really be taking his advice to heart. He was proud of her for that. She was definitely going to grow and blossom into a wonderful person as she grew up. He smiled, sniffled, and then placed his right hand on top of Kona's. Thank you, Sayo-san. You can just call me Kona. It feels too formal compared to what I'm used to when you call me by my last name. You're right. I guess things are always different in other cultures, he said. Then, Kona, you can feel free to just call me Takumi. Takumi. I like that. They were suddenly interrupted by a bell ringing throughout the building. Takumi laughed a bit and stood up. I guess it's time for lunch. That's good, because I'm famished. Do you have a place where you want to eat? I think Hikaru said she was going to eat on the roof, so I guess up there? Oh yeah! There's a really good spot up there, and it has an amazing view of the ocean. Kishi-san and Yumiko-san eat their lunches up there almost every day. Well, then let's go! They exchanged smiles and then made their way back to the classroom. Kona opened her bag and took out not only her lunchbox, but also her satchel as well. She put her satchel over her shoulder and then met Takumi by the door. What's with the bag? He asked as they left and made their way towards the stairs. Oh, this? It's just my satchel. I take it with me nearly everywhere I go, she briefly explained. It looks really cool. Thank you. The two entered the stairwell and made their way up to the rooftop. Takumi pushed open the door and they walked out onto the mini courtyard that was up there. Here we are, he said. Hey! Kona! Kona looked towards the benches that were up there and saw Hikaru and Shio sitting next to each other with inviting smiles. Hikaru was also waving her arm excitedly. Kona smiled herself and ran over, choosing to sit on the bench across from them. Hey! She said happily. You seem awfully happy, Shio commented. Well, of course I am. I've had such an amazing first day between the classes, the tour, everything. I'm so excited that I have the chance to be here. Man, I can't imagine being this enthusiastic about school, Hikaru laughed. Maybe if you didn't sleep through study hall, Shio started. Yeah, if I didn't sleep, I'd probably care more. I know, Hikaru said sarcastically. You've told me before. Shio rolled her eyes while Kona giggled. Mind if I join you guys today? They all looked up and saw Takumi standing there, with his usual smile. Oh, Takumi! Sorry, I totally just ran off without you, Kona apologized. But yes, please sit with us. Hey, don't worry about it, Kona, he responded and sat down next to her. Ooh, what's up with you two already being on a first-name basis? Hikaru asked in a teasing tone. What do you mean? I call you guys by your first names. Hikaru's eyes narrowed and she smiled sarcastically. Well, yeah, but you and Kaito-kun barely know each— Ow! Hikaru was interrupted by Shio elbowing her sharply in her side. Hikaru turned to her and her expression changed to a pout. Ow, Shio, that hurt, she whined. Anyways, Shio said, ignoring Hikaru's whining. Kona, I hope you enjoy your lunch. I used a few of my favorite recipes from my mom. Thank you, Shio, she said. They all picked up an item from their lunchboxes and held them out in front of their mouths. Itadakimasu, they said in unison. Kona bit into the rice ball and her eyes widened. Oh my goodness, this is amazing! Thank you, Kona, Shio said with a smile. This is seriously among the top entries on my list of my favorite foods from the human world. Thank you so much for making this for me. Yumiko-san is always making food for the student council, Takumi commented. She's really good at cooking and providing for us for our meetings. But that's just what I'm supposed to do in my position, Shio said sheepishly. Maybe so, but we appreciate it regardless. Ahem. Anyways, Shio muttered. Kona, what was your favorite part of the school? I really liked that courtyard in the middle of the school. We sat there for a few minutes to talk at the end of the tour, and it felt so relaxing. There's something about nature and the breeze that's just so calming. You're right, Hikaru hummed. I either go up there or up here to eat lunch because of how nice it is. Maybe we should just eat down there tomorrow, Shio suggested. We just have to get there early, since that's a more popular spot. Yeah, Hikaru agreed excitedly. That would be great, Kona added and looked up at Takumi. You're welcome to join us too, Takumi. Thank you, Kona. I'd love to. Kona smiled brightly and went to take another bite of her rice ball. Suddenly, a large booming explosion-like sound rocked the area, causing the building to shake and all of them to jump. What the hell was that? Takumi asked in a fearful tone as he frantically looked around. The bench Kona and Takumi were sitting on made it so their backs were turned towards where the sound had come from. However, Shio and Hikaru's bench gave them a direct line of sight, and they could see something strange. What is that? Shio asked. Is it... Hikaru mumbled. Kona turned her head, and her eyes widened when she saw the same thing. Without having to say anything to each other, she, Shio, and Hikaru all got up and ran towards the fence on the edge of the roof. Towards the area where the courtyard was, they could see what looked like a gigantic dome of some kind of purple-black energy, and it emanated a very dark feeling that they could feel even from a distance. Takumi stood up from the bench and walked over, so he was standing just a few feet behind them. He could see the dome as well, and it gave him the same feeling of uneasiness as the others. But he also felt... Do you think it's the sirens? Hikaru asked. Almost certainly, Shio added. Then we need to go, Kona urged. They looked at each other and nodded before they turned to run towards the stairs. Takumi immediately reached out and grabbed Kona's wrist to stop her. Kona, wait! He shouted. Kona stopped and looked back at him. Takumi, me and the others have to go. We have to do something about whatever is happening over there, she urged. But Kona, it looks extremely dangerous. I don't know what it is, but that dome gives me a very sick feeling in my gut, and I don't want you guys putting yourself in harm's way. What if it's another one of those monsters that showed up in the park? Kona, you guys can't go. Kona looked at her wrist and then back up at Takumi. She stepped forwards and gently wrapped her arms around him to try and reassure him. Thank you for your concern, Takumi. But I have to go. Before he could stop her a second time, Kona had removed her wrist from his grasp and was gone. She had already ran off to continue behind Shio and Hikaru. Kona! Takumi called and held out his arm. But she was already gone. Takumi retracted his arm and turned his head back in the direction of the courtyard. That dome of energy, it truly did give him an extremely sick feeling in his gut. There was something about that energy that it was giving off that it told him that it was dangerous. Looking at it, he was just filled with utter dread. But at the same time, this dome, its energy, there was an air of nostalgia to it. It was somehow familiar. He knew this feeling. The feeling of fear, despair, dread, hatred, fury. What was this dome of energy? Ba-bum. He squinted his eyes. Bodies. There's so many bodies. All of the blood. There's so much blood. What is happening? Why are there so many bodies? He swallowed the lump that had formed in his throat. The building is burning. The smoke is so thick. What time of day is it? He squeezed his eyes shut. We're running. My heart is pounding and my head is spinning. All I can hear is the pounding of our footsteps. We're running. We're running. Takumi's eyes shot open. Whatever trance-like state he had just been in, he had managed to pull himself out of it. How much time had passed? He felt like hours had just passed with him standing there, even though it had only been a handful of seconds. But that didn't matter. Now he had something else to worry about. His friends had just run off into danger with zero preparation. He had to stop them before it was too late. "Kona, wait up!" he called and ran towards the stairs. Kona, Shio, and Hikaru continued to run and grew closer to the courtyard. As they did, they saw many people also running, but in the opposite direction while screaming in fear. They quickened their pace, turned the corner, and ran underneath the entrance to the courtyard. And then they saw there exactly what they had expected. In the courtyard, there was a kiraimizu that looked as if it were simply made up of dark water, throwing punches, and wrecking the nearby benches and plants. Up on the roof, they could see the siren culprit observing the situation and directing the kiraimizu where to strike. Off to one of the far sides of the courtyard, they saw the unconscious bodies of 3 students. Kona grit her teeth and glared up at Seish. "Seish!" Kota shouted. Seish and the kiraimizu turned their attention towards the girls. "Ah, of course you would be here as well," Seish said and rolled her eyes. "I do wish you luck this time, though. You're not going to have a very easy time with this one." "Yeah? Well, we'll see about that," Hikaru taunted. Kona took her heart shell and sea charm out of her satchel and then tossed it to the side on a bench. Delphi popped out of the ocean book and sat on the bench beside the satchel.
"Be careful, girls' feet! This one looks far stronger than the others' feet!"
"Don't worry, Delphi. We're going to defeat this thing swiftly so everyone can return to a normal day," Kona assured. "Girls, let's go." Shio and Hikaru nodded and held out their heart shells. "Let's dive in! Precure, Marine, Splash!" The compacts opened and they inserted their sea charms. They then took their fingers and spun around the pearls inside, starting the transformations with a torrent of water. Takumi turned the corner so he was now looking in at the courtyard. His eyes widened as he saw not only another large monster, as he'd expected, but all 3 girls being engulfed in bright, colorful lights. They were transforming, and he recognized them. Takumi reached the entrance of the park and continued sprinting towards the center of the field. He saw the mysterious dark figure from earlier. Takumi reached the entrance of the park and continued sprinting towards the center of the field. He saw the mysterious dark figure from earlier, a dark behemoth of a monster, Hikaru sitting on the ground, and 2 other girls who were in brightly colored outfits. "Who are they?" he said to himself. "It's your turn now, Pearl!" the girl in the blue outfit shouted. "You got it, Tide!" The girl in the pink outfit jumped high into the air far above the monster and came spiraling down. It looked like she would slam into the ground, but at nearly the last minute, she came out of the spiraling motion and kicked the monster in the side of the face. Takumi watched this, and it was as if time slowed to a crawl, and all he could see and take in was the completely stunning beauty of this girl. This kick was so full of passion and hatred, yet also had a good helping of gracefulness to make it look perfect. "Whoa," Takumi muttered under his breath. "Those girls," he muttered to himself. They were Kona and the others?
"The shining orb of the sea! Cure Pearl! The shining current of the sea! Cure Tide! The shining star of the sea! Cure Reef! The power of the heart, water, and the stars! Protecting the ocean! Oceana Precure!" "I trust that you will take care of them, Kiraimizu," Seish said. The monster growled loudly and stepped forwards and threw a powerful punch at the girls. They all jumped out of the way as the gigantic fist slammed into the ground and landed in various places. Tide landed on one side of the arm, Pearl and Reef on the other.
Takumi's eyes widened as he watched this, and he turned around and ran back out of the entrance to the courtyard, and towards the direction he had come from. He stopped just in front of a door that had led inside the building, and turned back to see if anything else would happen, and if he'd need to continue running. "We need to lead it out of the courtyard before it causes more damage," Tide shouted to the others. Pearl and Reef looked at each other and nodded. Reef and Tide ran off back underneath the entrance to the courtyard and onto the open pathway alongside the building to draw the Kirai's attention away from Pearl. Takumi saw them and then ducked behind a bush so he wouldn't be seen.
Precure, gleaming pearl chain!
Pearl threw her chain and wrapped it around the Kirai's body, pinning its arms to its body. It began to thrash around furiously while grumbling, but Pearl only tightened her grip and stance. She said with a grin. "You're coming this way." Pearl began to step backwards and pulled the Kirai's along with her. Yeah, she grunted as she did so. "Interesting," Seish mumbled as she watched.
"Whoa, look at Pearl go!"
Reef cheered. "But I don't think the Kirai's will fit under the archway," Tide muttered. Tide ran back under the archway and held out her hands towards the Kirai's. "Precure, stinging tide tsunami!" The monster became engulfed in an orb of water, which slightly lightened its weight. "Pearl, jump over the building! I don't think it will fit under that archway."
"You got it! Thanks, Tide!"
Pearl crouched down and then jumped up high into the sky, pulling the Kirai's upwards with her with extreme force. She flew over the top of the building and then swung her chain up and over her head, slamming the Kirai's into the ground on the other side. Seish grimaced and bit her lip as she moved to a different part of the roof to continue observing the battle. Pearl then landed on the ground in between Tide and Reef. "That should be enough to weaken it for us," Pearl said. "Hell yeah, this was an easy one," Reef cheered. "I wouldn't celebrate yet," Tide said. Through the large cloud of dust and debris that had been created when Pearl had slammed the Kirai's into the ground, the monster could be seen getting back to its feet with little to no struggle. The attack had seemed to do nothing of significance, and it seemed almost completely unaffected. "Crap, maybe this one is going to be a bit of a challenge after all," Reef muttered. "Maybe so, but it's nothing that we can't handle. Let's go, girls!" Pearl shouted. Reef and Tide nodded, and all three of them jumped up into the air. They stretched out their right legs and then accelerated downwards, landing a kick right in the middle of the Kirai's head. It stumbled slightly, but remained upright. The girls grimaced, while Seish only smirked. "Get them, Kirai's," Seish simply stated. "Kirai's!" From the Kirai's back, 3 tentacle-like jets of water shot out and went straight towards each girl. They all gasped and crossed their arms in front of their faces to create their shields and block the attack. The tentacle jets hit their shields with enough force to cause them to all skid back a few inches. Takumi's eyes widened. "No!" he whisper-shouted to himself. The shields stopped the attack, but their arms shook furiously underneath the force. "Why is this thing so strong?" Tide asked. "I don't know, but we can't just stand here and wait to be crushed or something," Pearl responded. "Let's get out of here and try our attacks all together," Reef suggested. "Maybe we can make up new ones." They all uncrossed their arms and thrust them towards their hips, which created enough force to dispel the tentacle jets. They all then moved out of the way, and Reef jumped up into the air. She held out her hand, and her mirror appeared. "Starlight Reef!" A beam of light shot out of Reef's mirror and hit the Kirai's, encasing it in a large cage of coral. However, it quickly managed to punch its way out. "Tidal wave!" Tide slammed her hands on the ground, and out of it appeared a gigantic wave of water that slammed into the monster. It stumbled backwards, but remained standing. Takumi was growing increasingly worried as he watched. The girls were very strong, and they were so far holding their own. But what if they couldn't win against this one? What if this was the one time that something went wrong and they got hurt? Pearl jumped up and crossed her arms to ready her next attack. As she did so, Takumi looked at the Kidai Mizu and saw that another tentacle jet was forming, but Pearl didn't seem to see it as it was below her line of sight. His eyes widened. Icicle pearls! Pearl started to say. Kona, look out! Takumi shouted as he stepped out from behind the bush. Pearl stopped and turned her head towards Takumi when she heard him. Her eyes widened because she thought he had run away or was still on the roof where it was safer. Why was he here? Takumi? Kidai Mizu, now! Sei shouted. Kidai Mizu! The tentacle jet shot upwards and forcefully swung at Pearl. It slammed into her side and sent her flying towards the school building. No! She screamed. Her head collided with the wall of the building and she fell to the ground. Takumi's eyes widened. Kona! He screamed and began running towards her. Pearl! Titan Reef shouted. Noticing Titan Reef's lapse in concentration, the Kidai Mizu shot out 2 more jets of water. This time, however, they detached from its body, but still hit them with great force. They were sent flying backwards and were pinned to the fence, the water now acting as some kind of very strong glue. Nyah! Nyah! Reef shouted as she thrashed around. Crap, Tide muttered. Girl's feet! Delphi flew out from the courtyard and over to Titan Reef. She began trying to pull on the restraints, but with the strength of the material and her small size, she couldn't make it budge one bit. Yumiko-san! Kishi-san! Takumi shouted. The girls looked over at him. Kaito-kun, what are you doing here? Reef asked. God, never mind that. Kaito-kun, you check on Pearl. We can handle ourselves, Tide shouted. Takumi hesitated, but then nodded, turned around, and ran over to Pearl. He kneeled down on the ground and then picked her up so she was resting on his lap. Her bangs fell to the side, ever so slightly, and revealed that she had gotten a nasty cut on her head, and blood had been pouring down the side of her face and into a small pool on the ground. Tears began to pool in the corner of Takumi's eyes. Kona! Kona! Takumi pleaded as he shook her ever so slightly. But she wasn't waking up. Pearl had fallen unconscious and couldn't respond. Kona, he mumbled as a few tears trickled down the sides of his face. Papa, this can't be happening again. Seish watched Titan Reef struggle to escape the restraints and watched Takumi trying to wake Pearl with an eternally bored expression on her face. She rolled her eyes and turned around, taking a few steps in the opposite direction. Let's go, Kidai Mizu. There's better and more humans with confidence power that we can take elsewhere. Kidai Mizu. The monster grumbled and turned around and slowly began to follow Seish. Wait! You get your ass back here! Reef shouted while continuing to thrash around. It's no use, Reef, Tide said. We're stuck here. You can't give up, Fee! You're the only ones who can fight that monster, Fee! Delphi shouted. But what can we do when we're restrained and Pearl isn't even conscious anymore? Delphi stopped. Her eyes went wide and she looked down. You can't give up, Fee. We can't lose this world too, Fee. Tide and Reef looked at each other. She's right, Tide. We can't give up. Tide sighed. I guess you're right. We have to keep trying, she agreed. Papa, I have to stop them. Papa, they can't get away. Papa, they're not going to get away with this. Not on my watch, Takumi muttered to himself. He gently set Pearl back on the ground and stood up, clenching his fists. Don't worry, everyone. I'm going to stop them. Takumi turned around and walked back towards the middle of the walkway. Hey! Seish and the Kidai Mizu stopped and turned around to face him. Tide, Reef, and Delphi also stopped and looked at him with confusion. What the hell do you want? Seish asked. How dare you come to the school and hurt innocent people? No one here did anything to you to deserve this. You have absolutely no right coming here to hurt people and to interrupt their days without reason, Takumi shouted.
Even if you did have some arbitrary reason, it still wouldn't give you an excuse to hurt anyone. This is unacceptable. What's with this kid? Seish mumbled to herself. What does he think he's doing? Tide asked as they watched.
He's putting himself in danger, Fee!
Kaito-kun, what the hell? Reef said to herself. This school is one that is very important to me. Every student here is an amazing person, and they are going to continue growing into better people. I couldn't ask for a better student body. Everyone here is important to me, Takumi continued. There are so many people here who I consider to be my friends that I care for deeply, and who I would lay down my life for. And now... Takumi looked down and grit his teeth, as the image of Pearl's unconscious face, stained with blood, re-entered his mind. His hands clenched even harder. You've hurt some of them. How dare you hurt my friends! Seish rolled her eyes. Whatever, she said and simply pointed at Takumi. The Kirai Mizu began to create another water tentacle, but Takumi didn't seem to notice. He was far too upset, far too angry. I swear on my very soul that I will do everything in my power to protect the people in this school from you. I swear that I'm going to destroy... The tentacle shot out from the Kirai Mizu's body. Kirai Mizu! The tentacle slammed into Takumi and sent him flying backwards. Ah! He screamed as he hit the ground and skidded to a stop after rolling a few feet. Kaito-kun! Tide and Reef shouted together. Seish smirked. Looks like that little pest was taken care of. Let's go, Kirai Mizu. They turned around once again and began moving in the opposite direction. Tide and Reef looked at each other with wide eyes. What were they going to do? They were borderline glued to a fence, and they had no way of freeing themselves. Pearl had been rendered unconscious and was unable to continue fighting, and now one of their other friends had gotten hurt by trying to help them. They had to do something to stop Seish. But what? What could they do? Ba-bum. No, they can't get away. Ba-bum. Not again. They can't get away again. Ba-bum. This cannot happen again. Ba-bum. It can't. Ba-bum. I can't lose anyone else. Ba-bum. I have to stop them. Ba-bum. I have to stop them. Ba-bum. I have to stop them. Takumi clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. Slowly, very slowly, and very shakily, he began to push himself back up. He made it to his hands and knees. I'm going to kill you. Kaito-kun! Reeve shouted. How is he getting up? Tide asked. Kaito-kun, run! Get out of here! But he didn't seem to hear them. Takumi finally pushed himself back up, so he was standing once again. His legs shook from his injured state, and the pure rage and fury bubbling up inside him. Seish turned around and raised an eyebrow when she saw him. This kid just can't take a hint, can he? She muttered. Takumi grit his teeth and clenched his fists even harder. His face still pointed towards the ground as he continued to shake. His resolve was absolute. His mind was made up. He was going to fight back by whatever means. He wasn't going to let his friends get hurt. He was going to do something, even if it killed him. You are horrible. You don't deserve to live. After everything you've done, I can't forgive you. You don't deserve to live. His head shot upwards, and he glared directly at Seish. His deathly dark, angry, determined expression was evident even from a distance. I am going to destroy you! Ba-bum. A bright white light exploded from the center of Takumi's chest. This light was bigger and brighter than any of the other lights that had appeared with the other girls when they had unlocked their powers. It engulfed the entire area and lit up every single crevice, nook, and cranny. No corner was left darkened by shadows. However, unlike the others, Takumi didn't waver. He didn't seem surprised. He didn't seem confused. He simply stood firm, and his expression stayed strong as he stared down Seish. Seish blocked her eyes and screamed in near agony from the force of the light. Gah! What is this? She shouted. The pulsating light wasn't only brightening the area, As it reached where Tide and Reef were, the power it emitted immediately caused the restraints that had been pinning them to the fence to dissolve. Both of them fell to the ground with slight thuds. "Ow!" Reef muttered. "What is happening?" Tide asked as she rubbed her left arm, that was aching due to the force of the restraints. The light also reached where Pearl was laying, and washed over her like a wave of warm water. The cut on her head was almost immediately healed, although the blood on her face remained, by the light's power, and she began to stir from her unconscious state. "It's warm," she mumbled. Her eyes opened, and she shakily sat herself up. She looked around in a slight daze to try and see what was happening. When her eyes landed on Takumi, her eyes went wide, and she was immediately pulled into a clearer state of mind. "Takumi?" Suddenly, a bright orb of light flew out from the direction of the courtyard. Tide, Reef, and Delphi watched it, because as soon as they saw it, they thought they knew what it was. The same had happened to the girls before, after all. Lights appearing from their chests, and their heart shells flying out of the ocean book. "That's..." Tide started. "That's the final heart shell!" Reef finished. The orb flew closer and closer to Takumi, but as they watched it, Delphi realized that something was wrong. This orb, it wasn't what she thought it was.
"Wait a minute. No, that's not a heart shell fee,"
she said.
"That's..."
Takumi reached his hand above his head and grabbed the orb out of midair once it was above him. He then lowered his hand and held out the orb in front of himself, where it transformed into its proper form with another burst of light.
"The Prince's Medallion fee!"
Seisha's eyes went wide, wider than they had been previously. How was this possible? The Prince's Medallion, one of the objects they had been after this whole time, an object that held so much power that it could make or break their entire mission, was summoned and just grabbed with zero resistance by some random human? They had been fighting the Precure and failing at their one goal of taking the medallion, but this kid could just grab it, no problem? But with the light and the power that he was emitting, had he somehow attracted the object? Seish grit her teeth. Now that the medallion was involved, she knew she had to engage Takumi in a fight. "Kiraimizu, get him! Get the medallion now!" "Kiraimizu!" The Kiraimizu shot out another jet of water, one that was rushing towards Takumi faster than any of the others, in a desperate move to get the medallion. But Takumi didn't even blink. Didn't even move. "Mark my words. You are going to regret that you ever messed with me and the people I care about," he said. "This is a promise. I'm going to destroy you!" The medallion opened, and Takumi ran his finger over the 3 pearls inside, starting the transformation with a torrent of water and feathers. The power emitted from the beginning of the transformation blocked the Kiraimizu's tentacle and caused it to dissolve. "Let's dive in! Precure, Marine Splash!" Tide, Reef, and Delphi watched with eyes almost as wide as Seisha's. Sure, they knew that they were going to get a 4th teammate, but this way? And with the Prince's Medallion? What happened to the idea of the 4th heart shell being used by the 4th Precure? How was Takumi using the medallion? "Kaito-kun," Tide muttered. "The student council president is the 4th Precure?" Tide added. "The shining wings of the sea! Cure Nalu!" Takumi shouted. "In the name of the Ocean Kingdom, I will vanquish you from this world!" Everyone, Tide, Reef, Delphi, Pearl, Seish, none of them moved. They all sat or stood there in complete stunned silence. There before them stood Takumi, now Kirnalu, in a stance that indicated no sort of fear. His resolve was absolute and clear in his expression. "Kirnalu," Pearl mumbled to herself. Seish broke herself out of her stunned state and pointed at Nalu while gritting her teeth harder. "Kiraimizu, take the medallion from that kid! Now!" she shouted. "Kiraimizu!" Instead of shooting another one of its tentacle-like water jets, it instead threw its own fist forwards in an effort to punch and flatten Nalu. But still, Nalu didn't waver or even blink. He simply held out his left arm and caught the gigantic arm of the Kiraimezu, stopping it dead in its tracks. The force of him stopping the monster's attack created a powerful gust of wind and a loud sound similar to that of two cars colliding to ring throughout the area. He did it without a second thought. He did it while barely moving a muscle. "What?" Seish asked. "He just stopped it?" Nalu only glared at the monster. "Kiraimezu?" Nalu grabbed the Kiraimezu's arm with both of his hands and then managed to swing the behemoth behind him and over his head with ease before slamming it into the ground in roughly the same spot Pearl had previously. "Kiraimezu," the monster whined in a dazed tone as it tried to stand back up. But Nalu wasn't going to give it the chance. Nalu shot towards the Kiraimezu and threw his own punch towards it. Ha! His fist made contact with what would be the Kiraimezu's stomach area and sent it flying further down the walkway. He then ran at it quickly and slid underneath its legs so he could get behind it before he punched it in the back, sending it flying back the way it had come. "Whoa, how can he move so quickly?" Reef muttered with wide eyes. "Come on, Kiraimezu! You're stronger than this! Get up and fight!" Seish shouted angrily. The monster obeyed the command and began to get to its feet once again. But still, it wouldn't have the chance. Nalu began sprinting at the Kiraimezu and then jumped just before he collided with it. He rose higher and higher into the air until he might as well have been the size of a fruit fly, before he began to hurtle back towards the ground. It's almost as if he were flying. The Kiraimezu looked up at him with a panicked expression. Ha! Nalu landed a third, powerful punch on the top of the Kiraimezu's head, with the force of a plane crashing into the ground at high speed. The monster was immediately knocked out and stumbled over again before falling over for the final time. Mizu. Nalu landed on the ground and steadied himself. "No, no, no! Get back up and fight, Kiraimezu!" Seish was getting desperate. They needed that medallion. They couldn't let some kid interfere with their plans so easily like this. They needed that medallion. Nalu tapped the surface of the medallion with his right hand, which caused an orb of light to emerge from within it. It rose into the air above his head and elongated, at which point he reached up and grabbed it with his left hand. The light then transformed into a sword with another burst of light. "Nalu Rapier!" Nalu shouted and then lowered the sword in front of himself. Nalu then ran forwards and jumped up into the air once again. When he reached his peak height, a pair of feathered wings sprouted from his back, and he hung in midair for a few seconds while being surrounded by a flurry of feathers. "Precure, spreading Nalu feathers!" Nalu held out the rapier in front of him and began to fly towards the Kiraimezu. Right before he hit it, a sea blue colored beam of light that was surrounded by a torrent of feathers shot out from the end of the rapier. It hit the Kiraimezu and caused the feathers to surround the beast and encase it completely. "Mizu demasu." Nalu then finished his forward movement and sliced through the Kiraimezu with the rapier, which also drew the previous flurry of feathers through it as well. He landed behind the monster and stood up straight, moving the rapier to his side with an elegant yet forceful swoosh. The purification process finished, and the Kiraimezu exploded into another flurry of feathers that flew everywhere and then dissolved into many explosions of sparkles. These sparkles caused all of the damage that had been done to the courtyard and the area they had fought in to disappear. Everything reverted back to its normal state and looked as if nothing had ever been damaged at all. Seisha's eyes briefly went wide before her expression turned sour and she glowered at Nalu. "Cure Nalu," she seethed. And with that, she was gone. Tide, Reef, Delphi, and Pearl continued to look on at Nalu with utter shock woven into their expressions. Yes, they had been expecting that they would gain a fourth teammate, and hell, Takumi was a good candidate for that. But they had expected that person to get their powers from a heart shell just like they had. Even then, the strength, speed, and raw power that Nalu had just exhibited, it was nothing close to what they had achieved themselves. It was as if his rage, his fury, had manifested in his strength and fueled him to fight. But why was he so angry? Even if Seish had hurt people he cared for, that didn't account for the pure rage he exhibited. Where had that fury come from? Tide and Reef finally but slowly pushed themselves to their feet, without once taking their eyes off of Nalu. Kaito-kun is... Tide muttered. Nalu stayed in the same position he had ended his attack in for what seemed like an eternity. He just stood there. He didn't seem to be moving at all. He stood looking down with his arms by his side and his rapier in his left hand. It's as if he was frozen in place, and the only things moving were his hair and clothes in the wind. He just wasn't moving. And then, Nalu's head shot upwards, his eyes wide. It was as if he had remembered something. "Kona," he said and turned around. He spotted Pearl, still sitting in the same spot he'd left her, and his eyes quickly welled up with tears. His rapier disappeared, and he quickly ran to her side. When he reached her, he kneeled down and put his hands on her shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone slightly panicked and full of worry. Pearl stared at him and blinked a few times. Yeah, I'm fine," she said. Nalu smiled, relief heavy on his face, and his tears beginning to fall freely from his eyes. He wrapped his arms around Pearl and held her close. Pearl's eyes went wide at the gesture. "Thank God," he said, his voice shaking ever so slightly. "Thank God you're okay." What had happened? This did not seem like the same person that they had just watched single-handedly take down Akira Mizu with the strength and force of an entire army. This was not the person who was so full of rage and fury. This person was just Takumi. Good old, normal Takumi. Pearl didn't understand what had happened to him to cause him to transform and fight the way he did. None of them did. And the medallion. How had he used the medallion? What had happened to cause Takumi